In Part A of our 4th Ezra study, we covered the first full or focal points. It laid a strong foundation as to what to expect as we enter into the main prophetic chapters, starting with the eagle vision in chapters 11 and 12. These chapters are pretty fun. There's a lot of Roman history that we'll get into, and just coincidentally, there's exactly 316 slides to this presentation. So take that for whatever you want. A simple outline for these chapters are as follows. You see, we have another animal in the vision, with the lion showing up. Just like with Daniel, Ezra has a vision, then receives the interpretation of what he saw, typically given to him by an angelic mediator. However, there are going to be elements in the vision that don't get explained in the interpretation that leaves open the speculation as to what was meant by certain features of the eagle, open for debate between scholars. Also, Ezra reflects Daniel again, with him being told to write down the vision in a book, hide them, and that the words are meant for the wise. This type of language comes from Daniel 7 and 12. You see here that the shutting up and sealing of the prophecies he received, and that the wise will be the only ones that will be able to understand them, and Daniel 7 describes Daniel writing down the vision and sharing it. Now, for the sake of time, is that we won't cover Ezra's request to understand or his address to the people at the end. Neither of them offer anything to the understanding of the vision, nor any more about his transmission of the book will as well. So, let's dive into the eagle vision, and as we go through it, think about its relation with Daniel, and see if you can track the Roman emperors in it or not. And so, here we go. Then I saw a dream, and behold, there came up from the sea an eagle, which had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. And I saw, and beheld, she spread her wings over all the earth, and all the winds of the air blew on her, and were gathered together. And I beheld, and out of her wings there grew other contrary or opposing wings, and they became little wings and small. But her heads were at rest, the head in the midst was greater than the other, yet it rested with the residue. Moreover I beheld, and lo, the eagle flew with her feathers, and reigned upon the earth, and over them that dwell therein. And I saw that all things under heaven were subject unto her, and no man spoke against her, no, not one creature upon the earth. And I beheld, and lo, the eagle rose upon her talons, and spoke to her feathers, saying, Watch not all at once, sleep every one in his own place, and watch by course. Let the heads be preserved for the last. And I beheld, and lo, the voice went not out of her heads, but from the midst of her body. And I numbered her contrary feathers, and behold, there were 8 of them. And I looked, and behold, on the right side there arose one feather, and reigned over all the earth. And so it was, that when it rained, the end of it came, and the place thereof appeared no more. So the next following stood up, and reigned, and had a great time. And it happened that when it rained, the end of it came also, like as the first, so that it appeared no more. Then came there a voice unto it, and said, Hear thou that hast borne rule over the earth so long, this I say unto you, before you begin to appear no more. There shall none after thee attain unto thy time, neither unto the half thereof. Then arose the third, and reigned as the other before, and appeared no more also. So went it with all the residue, one after another, as that every one reigned, and then appeared no more. Then I beheld, and lo, in the process of time, the feathers that followed stood up upon the right side, that they might rule also. And some of them ruled, but within a while they appeared no more. For some of them were set up, but not ruled. After this I looked, and behold, the 12 feathers appeared no more, nor the 2 little feathers, and there was no more upon the eagle's body, but 3 heads that rested, and 6 little wings. Then saw I also that 2 little feathers divided themselves from the 6, and remained under the head that was upon the right side, for the 4 continued in their place. And I beheld, and lo, the feathers that were under the wing thought to set themselves up and to have rule. And I beheld, and lo, there was one set up, but shortly appeared no more, and the second sooner away than the first. And I beheld, and lo, the 2 that remained thought also in themselves to reign. And when they so thought, behold, there awoke one of the heads that were at rest, namely, it was the one in the middle, for that was greater than the 2 other heads. Then I saw that the 2 other heads were joined with it, and behold, the head was turned with them that were with it, and did eat up the 2 feathers under the wing that would have reigned. But this head put the whole earth in fear, and bare rule in it over all those that dwell upon the earth, with much oppression, and it had the governance of the world more than all the wings that had been. And after this I beheld, and lo, the head that was in the middle suddenly appeared no more, like as the wings. But there remained the 2 heads, which were also in the like sort, ruled upon the earth, and over those that dwelt therein. And I beheld, and lo, the head on the right side devoured it that was upon the left side. Then I heard a voice, which said unto me, Look before thee, and consider the thing that thou seest. Now, I'm sure that was pretty hard to follow, but like always, let's put some pictures to it, and I'm sure it's going to start to make a little more sense. Just like Daniel 7, the beast is seen rising out of the sea. 4th Ezra's eagle has 12 wings and 3 heads, but verse 3 said other wings grew out of the original 12 wings that were little or puny. This reflects Daniel 8's goat and with 4 horns, having a little horn come out of just one of them. Verse 11 says that there were 8 of them. So let's add them into the chart. Note in verse 3 it said out of the 12 wings. So there's no pinpointing to which particular emperor that could be done at this point. Ahead in verse 22, it says that the 12 wings and 2 of the little wings are gone. And verse 23 says that all that are left is the heads and 6 wings. Verse 24 says that 2 of the 6 little wings separated out from the 6 and went under the right head of the 3. Verse 25 adds a little more confusion as it describes the 4 wings still under the wing of the original 12, although the 12 at this point are long gone. 2 of the 4 are said to rule for a very short time, and both then disappear. Verses 28 through 30 say the 3 heads joined together to go against the 2 red wings, and did eat the 2 red wings. I just added the red, so hopefully it helps you track. Verse 32 describes the middle head having the greatest rule ever, but suddenly disappears in verse 33, leaving the 2 other heads to rule, and finishes with the right head devouring the left head. Now, I'm sure that was pretty tough to follow, even when I added in the pictures and kind of showed the birds eating each other and the feathers and all that kind of stuff, especially if this is your first time ever touching the chapters 11 and 12 of 4th Ezra. And just to forewarn you, it might get a little more confusing too. Again, or just to add, this isn't scripture, so some things are going to be like, well, that doesn't exactly. There's going to be a little bit of confusion. There's going to be a little bit of contradiction. And I can say is that I believe I have cleaned it up as best as I can to make sense of all of the symbolic representations of the 12 wings, the 3 heads, and the feathers, and all that kind of stuff. It'll be easier once we align history with it. We still have the interpretation to help define some of these things for us with the wings and heads. And just to hang tight is that we're going to now introduce the lion in the next 13 verses. So here we go. And I beheld, and lo, as it were, a roaring lion chased out of the wood, and I saw that he sent out a man's voice unto the eagle, and said, Hear thou, I will talk with thee, and the highest shall say unto thee, Are not thou it that remained of the 4 beasts, whom I made to reign in my world, that the end of their times might come through them? And the 4th came and overcame all the beasts that were past, and had power over the world with great fearfulness, and over the whole compass of the earth with much wicked oppression. And so long time dwelt he upon the earth with deceit. For the earth hast thou judged with truth, for thou hast afflicted the meek, thou hast hurt the peaceable, thou hast loved liars, and destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, and hast cast down the walls of such as these, or such as did thee no harm. Therefore is thy wrongful dealing come unto the highest, and thy pride unto the mighty. The highest also hath looked upon the proud times, and behold, they are ended, and his abominations are fulfilled. And therefore appear no more, thou eagle, nor thy horrible wings, nor thy wicked feathers, nor thy malicious heads, nor thy hurtful claws, nor all thy vain body. That all the earth may be refreshed, and may return, being delivered from thy violence, and that she may hope for the judgment and mercy of him that made her. And it came to pass, while the lion spoke these words unto the eagle, I saw, and behold, the head that remained and the 4 wings appeared no more, and the 2 went unto it, and set themselves up to reign, and their kingdom was small, and full of uproar. And I saw, and behold, they appeared no more, and the whole body of the eagle was burnt, so that the earth was in great fear. Now, if you just got a little bit more confused about the wings, don't worry. I'm going to do a pretty decent job at clearing it up for you. First thing is that verses 39 and 40 tag the eagle to the 4th beast of Daniel 7, and without question, it is Rome. Verse 40 said it overcame all the beasts of the past, and I leave the first 3 the same, as there's no reason to think that the 4th Ezra author changed them to another animal. He took liberty with the 4th, as Daniel 7:7 says it was diverse from all the beasts. Daniel didn't liken the 4th beast to any particular animal, as with the first 3. A notable change by the 4th Ezra author was his switching out of the 10 horns with 12 wings. Next notable piece is the abominations language in verse 44. The author says that they are ended and fulfilled. Out of Daniel, there are 3 places that the author could have been drawing from. 927, I think, offers the most potential, as it is in the plural and has the consummation language in it, whereas 1131 does not, and neither does 1211. But one could say that he might be seeing the 3.5-year period as being fulfilled. Textually alone, though, 927 seems like the most likely candidate. Now, as for the remaining head and 2 wings, is that the KJV clauses were likely hard to follow the sequence of events. So here's the revised version's wording. that reflects all modern versions if you were to find the text. And it came to pass, while the lion spoke these words unto the eagle, I beheld, and lo, the head that remained appeared no more, and the two wings which went over unto it arose, and set themselves up to reign, and their kingdom was small and full of uproar. And I saw, and behold, they appeared no more, and the whole body of the eagle was burned, so that the earth was in great fear. The eagle being burnt is reflective of Daniel 7:11 and 26, saying that the fourth beast's body was slain, destroyed, and given to the burning fire. Now we get the interpretation of the eagle from the fourth Ezra author. And here we get to see him describe the 12 wings, the 3 heads, and 8 puny wings for us. Chapter 12, verses 10 through 30. And he said unto me, This is the interpretation of the vision. The eagle whom thou sawest come up from the sea is the kingdom which was seen in the vision of thy brother Daniel. But it was not expounded unto him, therefore now I declare it unto you. Behold, the days will come that there shall arise up a kingdom upon earth, and it shall be feared above all that were before it. In the same shall 12 kings reign, one after another, whereof the second shall begin to reign, and shall have more time than any of the 12. And this do the 12 wings signify, which thou sawest. As for the voice which thou heard speak, and that thou saw not to go out from the heads, but from the middle of the body, thereof this is the interpretation. That after the time of that kingdom there shall arise great strivings, and it shall stand in peril of failing. Nevertheless, it shall not then fall, but shall be restored again to his beginning. And whereas thou saw the 8 small under feathers sticking to her wings, this is the interpretation. That in him there shall arise 8 kings, whose time shall be but small, and their years swift. And 2 of them shall perish, the middle time approaching. 4 shall be kept unto their end, begin to approach, but 2 shall be kept unto the end. And whereas thou saw 3 heads resting, this is the interpretation. In his last days shall the Most High raise up 3 kingdoms, and renew many things therein, and they shall have the dominion of the earth, and of those that dwell therein with much oppression, above all those that were before them. Therefore are they called the heads of the eagle. For these are they that shall accomplish his wickedness, and that shall finish his last end. And whereas thou saw that the great head appeared no more, it signified that one of them shall die upon his bed, and yet with pain. For the 2 that remain shall be slain with the sword. For the sword of the one shall devour the other, but at the last shall he fall through the sword himself. And whereas thou saw 2 feathers under the wings passing over the head that is on the right side, it signifies that these are they whom the highest has kept unto their end. This is the small kingdom, and full of trouble, as thou saw. The interpretation opens up the saying that the eagle from the sea is the kingdom that Daniel saw. There's zero doubt that this is talking about Daniel 7's 4th beast. Verse 11's the kingdom is lacking the word fourth, but it doesn't matter, as we saw 1139 through 40 already described the eagle as the 4th beast kingdom. Manuscript-wise is that the KJV didn't include it because of the codex that the KJV translators used, but you can see that it is in the revised 1895 version. Reminder is that this is the same codex where that has a large Lucana in chapter 7. Now, verse 12, I want to touch on for a second, is that it said, But the fourth beast was not expounded unto Daniel, therefore now I declare it unto you. This line is not true. Daniel 7:19 clearly has Daniel wanting to know the meaning of the fourth beast. And if you've seen my videos on Daniel 2 and 7, is that you know that we showed that the focus of both visions was on the fourth kingdoms and the end times that leads into the everlasting kingdom period. But the fourth Ezra author needed to throw that line in there in order to change the 10 horns to the 12 wings that allowed, to make it more contemporaneous to his time, and ultimately to say that God is going to judge Rome very soon. Verses 14 and 16 clearly define the 12 wings as 12 kings that rule consecutively. This is different from Daniel 10's toes and horns that are concurrent kings that are ruling just before the ushering in of the kingdom. I know I get a lot of pushback on this from the full preterist camp for this interpretation, but Revelation 17:12, speaking of the same 10 horns kings, says that they have not received a kingdom yet at the time when John was composing his work. This just doesn't work with full preterism. Now, in verse 15, the second king gets singled out and said that he will rule longer than any of the other 11. This corresponds to 11:13's and 17's description of the second king. Verse 17 said nobody would even do half of the time of the second king. That historically doesn't fit perfectly, as Tiberius is 2 years over Augustus's reign, but no other emperor ever came close to reigning even close to half as long as Augustus did. So there's no reason to think that the fourth Ezra author wasn't still counting these 12 emperors. When we get to the three heads is where things are still debated. Next, we get the interpretation of the voice or message from the middle of the body. One thing to remember is 11:9's statement that the three heads were said to be preserved until the end of the kingdom. 12:18 can be difficult to understand, as it says that after the time of that kingdom there shall arise great strivings, sounding as if this is talking about after the fall of the kingdom. That doesn't make sense textually, as the second part says that even though the kingdom looks on the brink of collapsing, is that it won't, but will actually regain its full force as it did before. What we have here is another text-critical issue where more modern versions say, in the middle of the time of that kingdom, great struggles shall arise. That's a little bit easier to follow. The difference is between the Latin text versus the Syriac, Ethiopic, and Armenian. I agree with the latter three for 3 reasons. Number 1, it textually fits with the latter part of verse 18, saying that the kingdom doesn't fall, but comes close to collapsing and then restores itself back up to full strength. Second is, again, textually, it lines up with 11:10's and 12:17's description that the voice came from the middle of the body, which represents the whole kingdom. And the third is that historically, it matches after Nero's death marked the midway point in the 12 Caesars, and 69 AD being the year of the 4 emperors as the empire broke out into civil war with a power vacuum for the throne ensuing. Suetonius's work allows you to read a full bio on these 3 short-lived emperors, but a quick summary of them can be seen here. The main thing I want you to take note of is how they came to power. Galba essentially overthrew Nero, then was overthrown by Otho, who committed suicide after losing to Vitellius, who was then killed by Vespasian's army. This history is really important as two out of these three, Vespasian had nothing to do with. Why that is important is because full preterists attempt to connect Daniel 7's 10 horns to the first AD Roman emperors. Textually and historically, this fails because 724b said, "Another 11th king shall arise after the original 10, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings." The subduing of 3 emperors doesn't happen historically in the 1st century. Subdue is an aggressive term. So, the 11th king's rise in power is done by overtaking 3 of the 10 kings. And let's be clear about the other name for this little horn here. It's called the Antichrist. So, Daniel 7:24 is our historical stress test to see if it was fulfilled in the 1st century AD under the Roman emperors. Well, for starters, is that with Vespasian, is that it fails because he wasn't the 11th, nor did he subdue 3 kings. He only took out Vitellius. Titus, his son, fails as he didn't subdue any Roman emperors. His father Vespasian died naturally, and Titus was the heir to the throne. How about Nero? Nope. He was number 6 and didn't take out anybody in the process. His mommy maybe poisoned Claudius for him to have the throne. And the last potential is Domitian. First, you might be wondering is how could one argue that for him when he's the 12th? Well, that's by first starting to count the emperors with Octavian instead of Julius Caesar. This makes him the 11th, but the subduing of 3 emperors, did that happen? No. Dad died naturally. Most say that his brother Titus died naturally as well, but maybe Domitian had a hand in that. But Domitian really assumed the throne through natural progressions of heirs, but not by aggressive subduing of 3 kings, as Daniel 7:24 says that he will. So, or the Antichrist will. So, sorry, full preterists, Daniel 7:24 doesn't work with any of the 1st century AD Roman emperors. Now the next thing that gets interpreted are the 8 puny wings. There's no agreement on who these guys are, and quite honestly, we're not going to be able to really pin it down with 100% certainty. But I think if we address the 3 heads first, is that we might be able to zoom in a little bit better on who they actually were. Verse 23 says, "In the last days of the eagle kingdom, 3 kingdoms shall be raised up." The word kingdoms is found in the Latin versions, but in the Oriental, they all say 3 kings. That fits the context way better, and to find out who these 3 kings are, is that it says the 3 kings will renew many things in the empire. That piggybacks off of 1218b, where the kingdom almost fell, but it gets restored again to its beginning. And this we saw in the first part of verse 18, speaking of the civil war in Rome at the midpoint of its kingdom. It almost fell, but was ultimately restored to full strength again by the new ruling dynasty of the Flavians, starting with Vespasian. So, the 3 kings, or the 3 heads of the eagle, is the Flavian house. Now, if you're thinking that this is an internal contradiction or causes conflict, because verse 22 said that the 12 wings and 2 of the 2 little wings disappeared, yet verse 23 says the heads are still there, so how can the Flavians be both of the 12 wings and still be the 3 heads at the same time in the vision? Personally, I don't think the 4th Ezra author cared to be that internally consistent, or one could say that he was really just doing a recapitulation in an authorship way. At the end of the day, the fourth Ezra book is not inspired scripture. So there's no need to think that it must be inerrant, okay? So just chill out on that point if you got kind of ruffled on it. You should be expecting some errors, as it's just a man-made product, or seemingly there's going to be little inconsistencies in the text. There are plenty of Second Temple texts that internally don't cohere with one another, but still add some value to us in like what were the people thinking around this time about the Messiah and the end times and who the fourth beast was, etc. And that's where we're going into this. Some scholars attempt to resolve the tension by saying that the three guys who attempted to assassinate or get rid of Nero as emperor can be considered part of the 12 wings, and thus freeing up the Flavian emperors just to be the three heads. I don't find that satisfactory, as everything about the 12 wings point to the 12 emperors. And these three usurpers of Nero never held the throne for 5 minutes. Others will stick with the 12 emperors, but then speculate on the three heads being Trajan, Hadrian, and another governor of Judea around 117 AD. So they're trying to go past the time of the 12 emperors to the next few emperors and another guy of Judea. There's failure in this as they simply skip over Emperor Nerva, and the other is that verses 26 through 28 said the great middle head dies with pain, and the two other heads that one of them will devour the other. Trajan did die with edema, a fluid swelling of the legs, so you could make a little case that he was the middle head because he died with some pain. Lucius Quietus, a general and governor of Judea, is then said to be one of the smaller heads, that's been theorized to have been killed by Emperor Hadrian after defeating the diasporic Jews in the Kitos War, but this isn't supported that well. The descriptions still fit best with the three Flavian rulers. Suetonius wrote that Vespasian was dying of a painful bowel illness and that he died in his bed. The language matches precisely with 4th Ezra right on. I think another overlooked line is back in 1132 saying the great middle head will have governance of the whole world. If you've been following this series closely, you remember that Josephus was taken prisoner by Vespasian, and in his wars book, he spoke about Daniel predicting that at the time from the 70 weeks, that the everlasting kingdom should be coming in and a ruler will be the governor of the whole habitable earth. It didn't pan out the way Josephus said, that the prophecy actually ended up being about Vespasian. Suetonius spoke of it as well when writing about Vespasian. 20 years later, Tacitus wrote on it as well, and that it applied to Vespasian and Titus. I think it's pretty hard not to see the connection between all three sources, which then means that the 4th Ezra author likely has the 70 weeks prophecy floating around in his head. As for the right head devouring the left head, is that you have ancient sources alluding to this. Suetonius, when writing on Domitian, says Domitian was treated unfavorably for being so immature, as he was trying to gain the same power and rank of his brother Titus. This continued on while Vespasian was ruling, and Suetonius said that Domitian kept plotting against Titus all the time, and that upon Titus's deathbed, that Domitian ordered that he be left for dead. Another famous Roman historian, Dio, said that when Vespasian was made emperor, Titus and Domitian were declared Caesars. So, Sounds like 3 heads to me. Big emperor in the middle, and a Caesar on each side. He continued saying that it was widely believed that Domitian had killed Titus, and says that Titus on his deathbed said, "I have made but one heir," and died. There's speculation as to what Titus meant by this, but Dio says that some felt that what Domitian was, or what he was alluding to, was Domitian plotting against him. Later, Athenian sophist Philostratus wrote on this in the life of Apollonius. Apollonius of Tyana was a philosopher who interacted with the Flavian house. A side note here is that if you know of Bart Urim, and look into other mythicists, is that they bring up this guy quite a bit, and they try to say that the New Testament writers used Apollonius as their archetype for Jesus. Just more made-up narrative stuff. Aside from that nonsense, is that he reports that Domitian was intentionally trying to poison Titus. Last Roman source is Aurelius Victor in the 4th century AD, who said that Titus was slain by poison by Domitian. So you have 4 ancient sources that say Domitian killed Titus. Yes, none of them have it with a sword, but to the author, he probably would say, you know what, I get a little bit of literary lenience here, okay, folks? I'm trying to make an apocalyptic book, all right? So let's just go with the norm here, all right? It was a sword. Who cares if it was poison or not? As the last part of the final head falling by the sword did actually happen, according to Suetonius, as Domitian was assassinated by means of getting stabbed to death. So Titus goes down, maybe by poison by his brother, or just at least left for dead, but you do have Domitian dying by the sword. So the case that the Flavian house represents the 3 heads is quite high from the contemporary sources at that time. This means that the 4th Ezra author likely composed this work shortly after Domitian's death and was hoping and praying that God was going to judge Rome and usher in his everlasting kingdom on earth. So we've covered the first 3 parts of the eagle, and that leaves us with a little guessing on who the little wings are. I say guess because honestly there's not enough details in the text to peg them, and even the notes and commentaries of Stones and Myers were pretty lacking at really any attempt by them at who the 4th Ezra author was potentially alluding to. Personally, I was disappointed with this because, I mean, this is what gets published as, hey, this is the top scholarly work out there, potential. At least my view is like, throw a dart at some people. Come on, guys, get a little bit of an attempt, and just see if something sticks. Regardless, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I'm just going to put it out there. And quite honestly, I think I'm hovering around the bullseye here with who these guys are. At the end of the day, it's not going to shift the landscape, that the eagle is Rome, the 12 wings are the 12 emperors, and 3 heads are the Flavian house. And this puts the author at the same time period as Josephus and the Apostle John when they were writing their works. Now, the 8 wings, I am going to put them into 4 pairs as the text talks about them in this manner, and I think there's a producible timeline for them. We know that the last 2 wings are tied with Domitian. So, you can say that the last 2 wings represent 2 people that lived on past his death. The middle 2 pairs history gets described in 1125 through 27 and 1131. I start here because the middle head, i.e. Vespasian, is said to have eaten up 2 little wings, number 5 and number 6. So, those 2 that were killed by Vespasian fall between July 1st and December 20th in 69 AD, because July 1st is when his legions declared Vespasian emperor, and December 20th was when the Senate confirmed it. I give that range because 1129 said that the middle head awoke from being at rest. I'm taking this as describing the beginning of the rise of Vespasian's power and becoming the emperor. Little wings 3 and 4 are described in 1126 and 27. It says that one of them was set up for a short period of time, and the second one's reign was shorter than the first. So, both of them are explained as though they held rule for a very brief amount of time. And 1125 says that the little wings 3, 4, 5, 6 thought to set themselves up and to have rule. See, these 4 are ambitious for the throne, but they never got it. So, 3 and 4 come before Vespasian's rise, and 5 and 6 are killed, or to say at least that their power is gone during his rise. Chapter 11 doesn't describe 1 and 2 or 7 and 8. Their description is in chapter 12. 12:21 says again, "And 2 of them shall perish, the middle time approaching, 4 shall be kept until the end, their end begin to approach, but 2 shall be kept unto the end." You get a broad overview of all 8 here, with puny wings 1 and 2 getting a description of dying in the middle time approaching. Approaching what middle time? Well, verse 19-20 say that the 8 puny wings are part of the eagle kingdom, and verse 18 we saw describes the middle point of the kingdom that historically matches Nero's death, marking the midway point in the 12 Caesars, and 69 AD being the year of the 4 emperors as the empire broke out into civil war with a power vacuum for the throne ensued. That exactly reflects 11.3's description that these little wings are contrary or opposing people of the throne that do become short-lived kings. So, little wings 1 and 2 come near the time of Nero's death at the midpoint of the kingdom's 12 emperors. Now, looking at it laid out like this, I think we get a pretty good feel of confidence as to who the first 6 little wings were. 3 and 4 are described as coming to power for a very short period of time, with the second being even shorter than the first. This exactly matches the description of Gobal and Otho. So, I'm placing them in at 3 and 4. Now, 1 and 2 we spoke briefly on earlier when discussing alternative ideas to the 12 wings, with 3 of them being conspirators against Nero. There's a case that can be made that any 2 of the 3 could fit the bill here. Piso's conspiracy is found in Tacitus's histories, where Piso was chosen by a group of senators and soldiers as their man to replace Nero. The plot was revealed, and 19 people were sentenced to death, including Piso. Although it says Piso wasn't in it for ambition, he still went along with a plan for overthrowing the emperor and becoming emperor himself. So I'm sure there was a little ambition there for the throne. For Vindex, Dio is our source. He says that Vindex was of royal descent and was a Roman senator. Dio gives him a bunch of other good descriptions and says he gathered an assembly in Gaul and delivered a long speech against Nero to rally the people to go and overthrow him in Rome. Special note is that Vindex didn't want the throne, but actually gave it backed Galba for the throne. After his death, Galba had coins minted commemorating Vindex for his support to the throne. Now, after the speech, Rufus, governor of Germany, set out to make war on Vindex for the plot, and after seeing defeat, Vindex committed suicide for his failure to overthrow Nero and felt that the gods of fate were against him. For Niphidius, we have Plutarch writing on him in his famous work, Parallel Lives in his section on the life of Emperor Galba. A difference with Niphidius is that his aspirations for the throne come after Nero's death. He claimed to have been part of the overthrow of Nero, and at Rome he was trying to gather all the powers so he could go before Galba could arrive from Spain. Niphidius even had it spread that he was the son of Emperor Caligula to show his royal blood, and he has a right to the throne. So Niphidius was after the throne and was close to actually getting it. He needed the backing of soldiers when it would eventually hit the fan with Galba's supporters, so he went up to a camp to get them to proclaim him emperor instead. But some there knew what he was up to and were already supporters of Galba, and so they killed Niphidius. So, out of these three, I think you can pick any two, but personally I'm going with Piso and Vindex, as their plots and death come before Nero's death. Now, for 5 and 6, we're looking for two that were described in the potential to rule, but were killed by Vespasian. I think Vitellius fits in this description, even though he did rule for 8 months. Again, I think you have to allow for latitude with the 4th Ezra author when constructing his apocalypse. Two other possible people are Pisos. The first is the son of Piso from the Nero conspiracy, and the other is Galerianus, Galerianus's father-in-law, Lucius Piso. I know it's tough to follow, but it's okay. Tacitus said that Galerianus was executed simply for being popular among the people. That included them thinking that he would be a good emperor, so Vespasian's right-hand man ordered for him to be executed outside of the city, away from the public's knowing. The other is Galerianus's father-in-law, who was proconsul of Africa and led a legion of troops and was assassinated by Vespasian's right-hand man. So again, you have 3 good options that fit the middle head, eating 2 feathers, who would have ruled. Now for the last 2 wings, after Domitian's reign, is that verse 21 said, "They shall be kept until the end." The end is describing the end of the eagle kingdom, the same as the first 2 wings, middle time approaching of the kingdom. This again shows that the 4th Ezra author was expecting the fall of Rome and God to be taken over very soon. Verses 12:29 through 30 wrap up the interpretation of the little wings, and they say that these 2 feathers passed over or sprung up, and that their kingdom will be small and full of trouble. So it seems like they're involved with Domitian here in some nature. We actually get more on these 2 in 12:2, in that they went unto the right head, i.e. Domitian, and set themselves up to reign. Is something like that recorded in history? Yeah, there actually is. As Domitian was assassinated, and the Nerva Antonine dynasty started the same day as the assassination, when the Senate made Nerva the new emperor. Dio is our source again on Nerva's rise. He says that the conspirators were having troubles taking out Domitian, and had troubles finding someone willing to take over as emperor, with Nerva ultimately willing to do so. Dio said that Nerva was of noble birth and good character. The conspirators had to persuade Nerva to overthrow Domitian, as he was a loyalist to the Flavian house, being a Roman consul with Vespasian in 71 AD, and also with Domitian himself in 90 AD. This explains why 1124 said they divided themselves out and settled under Domitian's head. And guess what? The year after Nerva was consul, Trajan became a Roman consul. Why I throw him into the loop is that 12:2 and 29 said these two's kingdom would be full of uproar, and it was, as Dio says that the Praetorians had a mutiny against Nerva and wanted the heads of those who had killed Domitian. Nerva tried resisting their demands almost to the point of his own death, but finally caved, and being so humiliated in the process is that he adopted Trajan as a son and heir to be the next emperor per their demands. So Trajan isn't Nerva's, his own son. Trajan became a Caesar right then, and eventually emperor, even though there was actually blood relatives of Nerva's that could have taken the throne. Trajan was a Spaniard and the first non-Italian emperor. So we have two little wings under Domitian that took over as eventual emperors in the period of unrest, and thus the interpretation of the 8 puny wings, with our author's composition date narrowed down to around 97 AD when Nerva adopted Trajan. All right, it's now time to interpret the lion, verses 31 through 36. And the lion whom thou sawest rising up out of the wood, and roaring and speaking to the eagle, and rebuking her for her unrighteousness with all the words which thou hast heard. This is the anointed, which the highest has kept for them, and for their wickedness unto the end. He shall reprove them, and shall upbraid them with their cruelty. For he shall set them before him alive in judgment, and shall rebuke them, and correct them. For the rest of my people shall he deliver with mercy, those that have been pressed upon my borders, and he shall make them joyful unto the coming of the day of judgment, whereof I have spoken unto thee from the beginning. This is the dream that thou sawest, and these are the interpretations. Thou hast only been made known to know the secret of the highest. First off, we only need to cover verses 31 through 34 on the line. But man, are they just packed with goodies here. We see instantly that the line is called the Messiah. Manuscript-wise, the Ethiopic and Aramaic one use the pronoun he, and Aramaic 2 says the king. Everyone else says the Messiah, and those other variants still do as well. The 4th Ezra author is using Genesis 49, 9 through 10, where Jacob prophesies on Judah that he is a lion's whelp and that the royal line will come from his tribe. The until Shiloh comes is undisputed language about the coming King Messiah. So, it's easy to see his use of it. And the same goes for John in Revelation 5:5, calling Jesus the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Note, this is the only place in the New Testament that calls or refers to Jesus as a lion. Now, verse 31 shows the Messiah reprimanding the Roman Empire. The content of that reprimand is the last 10 verses of chapter 11. We've covered everything else there earlier, other than verse 46 that we'll cover here shortly. A key Daniel phrase is found in 11:37 with the phrase, he sent out a man's voice. That comes from Daniel 8:16 with the vision of the ram and goat with a figure seen between the banks of the Ulai, who orders Gabriel to give Daniel the interpretation. This figure Daniel sees again in his final vision of chapters 10 through 12, where Daniel describes him in 7 glorious, divine descriptions. The key is that Daniel 12:6 says that the glorious man was upon the waters. These two visions are obviously talking about the same central figure, which means that the 4th Ezra author connected the lion, i.e. the Messiah, to Daniel 8's and 10 through 12's glorious man figure. So, from Daniel, we know that the 4th Ezra author sees the King Messiah in those two visions for sure, which, again, is no different than when John in Revelation 1:13 through 15 equated Jesus to the glorious man of Daniel 8 and 10 through 12. Now, verse 32 has a debated text critical issue in it. We don't see it here because the Latin doesn't contain it, but it's actually contained in the Syriac. We see the additional line, "Who shall spring up from the seed of David?" Charles Torrey wrote an objection to this in his article in the Journal of Biblical Literature entitled "The Messiah, Son of Ephraim." You heard that right. Torrey is advocating for two Jewish messiahs. If you have heard of this before, you probably have heard of the title Messiah ben Joseph. And this is spoken of still today in rabbinic circles as arguments against Jesus as the Messiah. You could go to Sepharia and do a simple search for it and see the direct description that the Messiah ben Joseph character is killed and Messiah ben David is the ultimate redeemer. Biblically, Torrey expounded on 3 texts that he pointed to the early Jewish belief, or he said in the early Jewish belief of 2 messiahs. Number 1, you're going to like this, is Daniel's 70 weeks. Guys, Torrey's not a Christian, okay? Yet, flat out says that the Mashiach in 926 is Messiah ben Joseph. And 924's Anoint the Most Holy is about Messiah ben David. He says flat out here that Daniel's 70 weeks are messianic. Another is Zechariah 12:9 through 11. Again, Torrey sees this messianically, and the piercing is talking about the death of Mashiach ben Joseph. Zechariah 12:10 is used twice in the New Testament, in both cases saying that its prophetic fulfillment was with Jesus' crucifixion. The last text Torrey cites is Zechariah 4:14 and says that a Targum said that the 2 anointed beings here in the text are 2 divine beings. And it's for these reasons why Torrey has to adamantly say that the Messiah in 4th Ezra 12 is Messiah ben Joseph and not the son of David, and that the Latin text lacking the phrase is the original. What Torrey didn't do in his analysis of 4th Ezra 12:32 was discuss that the lion used in the text is clearly coming from Genesis 49's lion Messiah of Judah, not Joseph. This messianic seed line is given to David in 2 Samuel 7:16 when God promises David that his house and his dynasty will last forever, i.e., a son of David will always be on the throne. Ezekiel continues the idea with God saying that he will put 1 shepherd, not 2, a Davidite, over Israel. The phrase, the son of David, is first coined in a Jewish work, the Psalms of Solomon, in the 1st century BC. This is why Jesus is called the son of David, because it's a phrase that became a title for the Messiah in the Jewish population, just like the Son of Man and the Son of God. There's no the son of Joseph in any Old Testament verse. But Torrey has to maintain this because this Messiah ben Joseph idea, because it becomes too Christian sounding, and he knows 4th Ezra 7:28 and 12:34's sequence of events, and if there is only one Messiah in view, then it means that the Davidic Messiah has two comings, one resulting in his death and the second at the end of days. Now, even without the seed of David language, is that verses 32 through 34 do point to the Davidic Messiah is very clear because of the Daniel 7 language. First, we see that the Most High has kept the line unto the end. This kept language is speaking about the Messiah's pre-existence. Yes, you heard that right, but it doesn't necessarily mean eternal. I'll explain that in a bit. As said, Daniel 7's throne room scene is embedded in here because 1233 has the Messiah bringing the eagle kingdom before the Most High in judgment. Just like in regular court, the guilty party comes before the judge alive, gets read his charges, and then he gets sentenced. In this case, the eagle kingdom is brought before the highest and ultimately is destroyed for his crimes against humanity. This follows Daniel 7:9 through 14 perfectly. God is on his throne ready to judge, and the books were open, and they have all the crimes listed out that the fourth kingdom committed. 7:13 through 14 is the entrance of the Son of Man before the Ancient of Days in heaven that shows that he, Son of Man, is divine. The fourth Ezra author says, kept until the end, because Daniel 7's courtroom is about judging the fourth kingdom and the transitioning into the everlasting kingdom at the end of the days. This idea of pre-existence is seen in 1st Enoch 3 times very clearly. 46:2 through 3 directly shows the Son of Man with the Ancient of Days. 48:2 through 7 is explicit that the Son of Man was in the presence of the Ancient of Days before the creation of the universe. 48:6 says the Son of Man was chosen and hidden with the Ancient of Days before creation. Chapter 62 says the Son of Man was hidden in the presence of the Most High and will be revealed to God's elect, which the fourth Ezra author used and exactly mirrors in 1232 and 34 exactly. Even in later rabbinic texts, you have the Messiah said to have preceded creation. Here's another saying that in Genesis Rabbah, and interesting that this one used Micah 5:2 as support. Remember Jesus' prophecy in Matthew being born in Bethlehem? Right there. Which means the rabbi is putting the birthplace of the Messiah in Bethlehem too. So it's clear to see that the fourth Ezra author in 12:31 through 34 is replicating Daniel 7's throne room scene. It's really hard for Torrey and anyone else to argue against this when, back in 12:11 through 12, or 12:11 through 12, the fourth Ezra author said that the fourth beast kingdom wasn't expounded unto Daniel. And in the very next chapter / vision, we see a man coming with thousands of heaven and out of the sea, both clearly Daniel 7 rooted, and 13:26 says that he was kept a great season in heaven with the highest and will deliver and rule those left behind. It's the exact same language as 12:32 and 34. So arguing that these two are two different messiahs is extremely weak. And as said before, verse 34 provides us with the sequence of events with the Messiah. This verse is 1146's language repeated, and we see that it's God's people being delivered and made hopeful or joyful for the coming day of judgment. Initially, someone might think that this is talking about, the earth is going to be being refreshed and returning back to the back like Isaiah 65 and 66, new heavens and new earth language. But looking at 1146 is that the sequence would be backwards, as the judgment day occurs after God creating the new heavens and the earth. Isaiah is clear that the day of the Lord happens, then the new heavens and earth come in. The same goes in the New Testament with 2 Peter 3:10 through 13, laying this sequence out, and Revelation does as well. 1146, all the earth, was about the Jewish people whom Rome was governing, and the lion said that they did not rule with truth. So, the sequence of events is that the Messiah is first delivers, then there's a joyful waiting period, then comes the day of judgment. It's interesting that textually you see the same layout in Revelation. Now, as said, Tori knows that 4th Ezra's 728's and 1234's sequence of events are the same, just as 728's Messiah being revealed matches 1232's being kept. Therefore, 728 and 1234 mirror each other perfectly, with a small remnant remaining in a joyful period before the day of judgment. 728 says the period is exactly 400 years. Then, after those years, the Messiah dies. 728 through 29 perfectly overlays 12:31 through 34, and Tori himself admitted this. He just couldn't and wouldn't allow for this Messiah figure to be the son of David. But we have demonstrated quite clearly that the text is overwhelmingly pointing to the son of David, and there's zero textual support from 4th Ezra to arbitrarily insert a second figure in. Tori and others who do it are doing this because this layout naturally implies two comings of the Messiah, which would mean he would need to be resurrected in order to come a second time.
Reminder, hit the subscribe button below, turn on the notification bell, hit the like button, and leave a comment. And don't forget to visit us at justscripture.org. And in the meantime, stay salty.